Hi, and welcome to the Hendrix College Career Services Resume Writing video series. In this lesson, we're going to focus on optional sections that you may want to include in your resume. Now, you should always include your heading, your education section, and your professional experience section. But what comes next is going to depend on your experiences as well as what you are applying for next. The list of possibilities is almost endless. If you include an objective or a professional summary, this will actually be placed just under your heading and before your education section. But it often is not necessary or even the best use of the limited space on your one-page resume. A relevant experience section is kind of like what it sounds like. If you have a range of experiences, but a few of those are going to be especially relevant to the reader, then you may want to pull those into a separate section. You would continue to have your other work experience that shows other opportunities that you have taken to develop competencies that are transferable regardless of field. But that relevant experience section might be listed before the other work experience. You could have a leadership section, any type of involvement on campus or in the broader community. This can include experiences at Hendrix, throughout Conway, or even back home. You talk about awards and honors, research projects, special projects, presentations, published works, and don't forget your Odyssey projects. A skills section and certifications, any professional associations or memberships, a reference section. We'll take a closer look at that in a moment. Don't discount your Hendrix experiences. Employers aren't just interested in work experience. Like you, they know that the competencies you develop through involvement in clubs, organizations, athletics, etc., will follow you to the workplace, making you a valuable employee. Now we're going to look at a few examples. Now here are a couple of options for leadership. You can see that in this particular case, the student was president here, hall representative there, but see that they've listed the organization, they've listed the full time that they were involved with that organization, and then for their time as president, they listed that shorter time period here. There are times when you may want to include a descriptor, just like you might with your professional experience section, but that's not always necessary. If you do, though, be sure again to just use verb phrases, no full sentences. All right. In this second option, we have a leadership and involvement section. So this person didn't have multiple leadership experiences. You don't typically want to have a section with just one entry. So in this case, they combined a couple of sections together to show their leadership and involvement. We always consider athletics to be a leadership experience. And definitely want to include, if you're a college athlete, you definitely want to include that on your resume. Here we've got community involvement, which also might be listed as service experience or volunteer experience. Again, we've got the organization, city and state where it's located, this person's time of involvement there. And in this particular case, they did include a little bit of a descriptor and even gave some quantification to help really paint a complete picture for the reader. Now, a skills section is a great addition to a resume, but keep in mind that it should focus exclusively on hard skills. So anything that might be considered a soft skill or a competency, that's something you should demonstrate within your experience description. So those are professional experiences or your leadership and service experiences. In this skill section, we're focusing on things like languages, certification, technology, software, programming. I do have technology listed twice. These are things that I've seen on different resumes. In this case, this is more focused on general skills. These are things that students often take for granted because they do them all the time, but they're still really important to include. In other cases, it might be a student who has proficiency in a very specific type of program that would be really relevant to a particular employer, or they might be a computer science major and have different coding languages or proficiency in a wide range of platforms. If you have two or more of the different categories, then you would definitely want to have a skill section. If you just have one of these categories, then you might just label that section languages or label that section certifications, just depending on what you're trying to highlight. References are optional on the resume. You will definitely need to provide those at some point in the application process, and the employer is always going to give you a way to do that. So don't use that space on your resume if you don't have to for these references. When you do supply references, unless the employer has given you some other guidance about what they need in those references, the 2+1 rule will be your guide. So 3 references, they can be some combination of Hendricks and non-Hendricks references. So 2 of one and 1 of the other. But what you don't want is to have only Hendricks references or only non-Hendricks references listed. Thank you for joining me. Please check out our website. We have so many other resources available to you, and we are always here to help. Have a great day.